Hi, everybody. I'm John Jackson. I'm one of the pilgrims who did the pilgrimage to Santiago back in May. I'm joined by other pilgrims here. We're going to have kind of like a panel session towards the end. I'm just going to kind of go through and go through a couple things, give a little bit of background about the Camino, talk a little bit about our experiences and our trip, and then show some photos, and then we'll have some time for reflection. So I'm just going to kind of move through that quickly because I think the slides and reflection are what most people are here for. So before we get underway, I just wanted to have a prayer. So this is one of the prayers we prayed while we were on our trip, and a little nice little devotion book. So let us pray. Dear God, we ask your blessing as we travel today in spirit. Guide our minds as we learn of those who came before us, traversing the pilgrim way. Give us hunger to seek your face in paths through fields, along roads trod by many seeking the blessing of your presence. Nurture our fellowship and help us to see each other as a brother or sister, sharing the journey to your blessed kingdom. Amen. Amen. And that's the Pilgrim's Prayer by Nineveh Murray. And so hats off first to David and Chrissy and the church staff who put this together, because every day we started a devotion and a prayer, and every day had different dates and everything like that, and then room for reflection as we were walking for that particular day. So that was very cool. Okay, so hold on, the screen went dark. Okay, so how many in here have heard of the Camino or Camino de Santiago? Okay, a lot. So it's the translation of it in English is the Way of St. James, and it's St. James the Apostle, who was John's brother. And after Christ's crucifixion, he traveled to Spain. After Christ's ascension, he traveled to Spain to help spread the word. He returned to Rome and was martyred by King Herod, and that's actually in the book of Acts, chapter 12, verse 2, if you're interested, but we're in St. James. But his followers took his remains back to Spain and left them in a cave near where they came on the beach at Finisterre. In 814 AD, a hermit named Leo saw a series of stars in the night sky. So he just kind of hanging out in the wilderness and sees these stars. And he followed them into the brush where he heard angels singing. And he knew that this was a special place. So he went and told the bishop and said, I think y'all need to send somebody out here to check this out. So they did, and the undergrowth covered a cave, which contained a sepulchre inside, and papers declaring that it held the bones of St. James. And that spot is where the cathedral in Santiago was built. So there are lots and lots of books written about the Camino and the experience in pilgrimage. I have two. The first is called Off the Road by Jack Hitt. If anybody has seen the movie The Way, this was actually used as some of the source material for that book. It's very good, very well done. He walks the entire Camino, and he did it, I think, in the late 1980s. So he started all the way in France and walked all the way to Santiago. The other is actually a book called The Pilgrimage. This is a novel. The guy who wrote The Alchemist, this is his companion piece, and it's actually, it's not like a sequel or anything, it's like a companion piece to The Alchemist, but it's a very good book as well. So just a couple minutes. Okay, so and people have been taking this journey for about 1,000 years, more than 1,000 years. The first book written about the Camino was actually written in 1160. So it's 800 and some years old. So it's a lot. How we did our day, we didn't walk the entire, we started in a town called Astorga, which is about 160 miles from Santiago. We would get up, we would have breakfast, we gathered together for a little bit of reflection time. We had to have our luggage ready to go by 8 o'clock for pickup. And then we'd see our luggage off and we'd walk. Some folks would linger a little bit, check out the town. Other folks would be eager to get on the trail and go right away. And so we walk for a little while, we stop in a town, have coffee or orange juice or something as part of the day, and then continue walking. We stop at lunch, keep walking, arrive at the next place, we clean up, I do a lot of laundry in the sink. And then we gather for reflection, and we have dinner, and then start the day over again. So that was kind of just a brief overview of our day. I'm just going to walk you through a couple of photos. I had intended for this to kind of play on a loop while we talked, but it wasn't going to work that way. So I'm just going to kind of make this like my own violence trip to Grand Canyon. So. These are the pilgrims, many of whom are here, so you'll hear from them later. But there were 11 of us, and 8 of them are here. This was us at dinner one night in a town called Arzua, kind of close to the end to Santiago. Probably the best hotel we stayed in.
Yeah.
And this is the group photo of just folks showing David, his sister Emily, and his dad Jim. Jim was kind of the organizer of it. This is them at Finisterre. These markers that you see there, those were everywhere on the Camino. The 2 big symbols of the Camino are the scallop shell, which is synonymous with St. James, I'm wearing it, and then yellow arrow. And every marker had a yellow arrow, except this one, because it marked me at Finisterre. Our total route was about 167 miles, so we started in Astorga over there and ended up in Santiago over there, and then we took a bus. First time any of us had ridden in a car in 2 weeks, from Santiago to a place called Murcia, and then Finisterre. But that's basically the route that we took. Our biggest hike, I think, was 20 miles to Compostela from a little mountain town on day 2. So that was really fun because it was like, wow, and it was not just easy walking, it was up and down, like going up, some intense trails and down some intense trails to get there. This is Astorga, the cathedral. The cathedral is also where the bishop for Leon was located. And that's one of his rooms over there, or one of the bishop's rooms. Interestingly, the bishop never stayed there because it was still being built. It took like 60 years for it to be built. And then that's the exterior cathedral at night. This was our first sort of on our first walk from Astorga to Ravenel, which was the mountain town. And along the way, we just met a whole group of people. You can see up in the other left corner. There's lots of people. I mean, we kind of started right out of our hotel, walked along, and next thing you know, it was like a throng of people speaking all kinds of languages and everything else, which is really cool. That's what made the Camino interesting, is that people from all over the world do this. We stayed in Ravenel. This is outside of our hotel. I just wanted to point out that there are 10 of us at the bottom, but if you look at the arrow up the top, that's where David is. So check it out. But that's when we give you group photos. That was before our big hike to Ponferrada. On the way to Ponferrada, we stopped and visited the Iron Cross. And the Iron Cross is the highest part. So there are multiple routes throughout Spain to get to Santiago. The most common one, the most popular one, is the Camino Francis, which is the French route, and it starts in France and goes all the way to Santiago. Like I said, we picked it up at Astorga. But the Iron Cross is the highest point on that particular path. And tradition is for the pilgrim to carry a rock that represents their burdens, their hopes, their prayers, and place it at the foot of the cross, at the Iron Cross. And so once you climb up the hill to get there, because it's nothing but rocks at the bottom, you place your rock. And so those are the rocks that many of us brought. David was kind enough to give a little blessing to him on the way up there. And we got there and placed them and just hung out for a day, and kept on our way. The first part of the Camino was pretty mountainous, and so there was a lot of up and down and hills and walking through, but then we have scenes like that, which are pretty amazing. We got to Ponferrada. Ponferrada is actually a big city in northwest Spain. The Knights Templar actually had a castle there. In Jack Hick's book, he sort of posits that maybe the Holy Grail is buried there, or one of the locations, but David, Cheryl, Chrissy, I think a few other folks toured the castle the day after we got there because we had to kind of keep going and the group left and they wanted to keep checking it out. So that was, and then we went to Villafranca, another mountain town. The picture in the upper left is something that appears in the way a lot. Apparently it's a common image that people see on the Camino. Cheryl and Mark I don't know, take a picture, under something, but then we left Villafranca and went to Sobrero, which was probably the hardest climb of the day. It's you kind of start in the valley and you kind of work your way up and find your way up. Several of the folks actually rode horses up, which is kind of cool because they could do that, but you could also just kind of walk up as well. And that's the folks who rode the horses. That's the guy who helped them with the ride, helped the way. The church you see here is one of the oldest churches on the Camino. It was the site of a miracle that they still have because it was part of the Eucharist. Apparently, the paten and the cup started to show like the blood of Christ, and so it's actually under glass in kind of a little area off the main church. But we'll talk a little bit later. But one of the things that my most favorite moment was a prayer service we attended at that church the night we arrived. So that was really cool. And it was also a great sunset. So the next day we left and we went to try Compostela. A lot of monuments and statues and things along the way. So always good to stop and take photos and things like that. That's try Compostela. I regret not doing the next day as we were leaving try Compostela. David mentioned that he had a hard time sleeping or found himself up in the middle of the night and looked out and saw like basically the Milky Way because it was really dark, really bright stars, everything else like that. I tried to do that later on the trip and didn't see anything. Heard a lot of dogs barking and other stuff, and then I could go back to sleep. So that was kind of fun. That seemed really cool. On our way to Sarria, we stopped by. We found like this little cabin nook kind of off the road, and we were walking by and we heard English being spoken out of it. I was like, oh, that's weird. And I think it was Emily who said, I want to go in there. And it was a guy named Art who was an artist. And he was English, but basically he had walked the Camino for a couple times, came across this. This used to be an abandoned farm, or abandoned barn. And basically he made it into his studio. And so all of us bought artwork, talked to him. It was really a good experience. And he made us all a stamp, which that's the other thing I forgot. We have every stop we made, we had to fill out a stamp and get a stamp in order to get our Compostela. I can pass this around if you want. See it. But we had to get at least 2 stamps a day. So Art actually made a piece of artwork for each of us that we had in there. And he also, every piece of art that he did had the saying from the gospel, Jesus said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. That was kind of like his theme running through everything. So it was a really special moment to hit that. Sarria is like the biggest town you go to. And it's also the last place that people can walk the Camino and get the credential towards the end. And so the crowd started to increase. The number of people that we saw along the way really started to grow after that. I just wanted to, a lot of walking. A lot of walking. But you know, you can see the scallop shell and the yellow arrows were there pretty much every step of the way. There was a yellow arrow painted on the ground, on the road. People had put them together, the pine cones and rocks. The funny thing was when there were two, it was kind of like a Wizard of Oz moment where you could go both ways. But there are tons of apps. We use two apps, Camino Ninja and one other app. And we would look through the notes and figure out, okay, this way is longer, this way is shorter, or do we want to go see a monastery or something? It's like, no, okay, keep going. And so we would just keep doing that. On our way out of Porto Moran to Playa del Rey, we passed a series of Roman ruins of a Roman fort that was really, really old. It was on top of a mountain. And it was just, you know, I remember walking around and thinking, you know, just to be out here in that time, pretty much on your own. And you're watching for, I guess, Moors or, you know, whatever to go and you know that you're alone. That's kind of intimidating. A couple more scenes. Lots of monuments and statues to St. James along the way that you can see. It's really a remarkable experience to do this. These pictures hopefully can give a sense, but it's really something that if you have the opportunity, you really should experience. This was in the back of a really nice hotel that we stayed in, the hotel. That was really cool. It got a little bit more rural as we got closer to Santiago, and then as we made our way into Santiago, we passed through this big eucalyptus forest. You could also see this was at a park outside of the city. Those are the spires of the cathedral. So that's a really special park for people to see. And then of course, you know, we get Santiago, and then that's the cathedral itself. Lots and lots of really good pictures that people took in the cathedral. I was like, I just want to kind of show a few and then but it's a really just awe-inspiring experience. This thing here is a big incense thing that they swing that we actually had a chance to see in action, and it was pretty amazing. So we finished in Santiago. The next day we went to two coastal towns. One is called Murcia and one is called Finisterre. Finisterre is here at the bottom, and it's believed to be the place where St. James came on the shore. The town of Murcia also has a claim that that's where St. James actually landed as well. So and they're about 30 miles apart from each other. But there's a marker that shows basically the end of the Camino. The Camino technically ends in Santiago, but people do walk from Santiago to Finisterre or Murcia to reach the coast. The biggest thing is just, you know, we had fellowship along the way, because obviously, you know, every day you're walking with a different person, or you're walking with somebody, or you're walking alone. You hear, you know, an English accent, or you hear an Australian accent, and you start talking to the people around you, but also it's just the time to get to know each other as well. So this was like called Pilgrims on Pedestal, by the way. But just opportunities to gather and share meals throughout the day, relax. And then, you know, that was one group that made it to the park, and you kind of see the spires off in the distance. So stuff. And then this was taken out of lunch at Finisterre, where we could just gather and then get in the forest. And then Kristen Stone, who was on our trip, is with Emily and Kristen in that photo, and then the Olsons in front of the cathedral stuff. And that's us at Finisterre. So that's the slideshow. Again, it's a small slice. I mean, there's so much. I mean, there were tons of photos, and I mean, the cool thing, you know, it's sort of a blessing and a curse, because part of doing this is you get to kind of, I can unplug and I can get away and everything. But you know, you've got apps And so you want to know, is there a place to stay or is there somewhere to eat in this town? So the app would say yes or no. But the other thing that we use is we use WhatsApp as a way to kind of share where we are, what we're doing, who's ahead, who's behind, who's coming later. You know, what did y'all do when you came to this fork in the road and there were two signs going that way, you know, opposite ways. And so it was like, we went left, y'all go right, you know. And so that was just a good way. Or is everybody arrived at the hotel, or you know, what time's dinner and things like that. So, but it was also a great opportunity to share pictures. So pretty much everybody took pictures and then would post it to WhatsApp, and then we could all see like amazing photos. And so, you know, there's some amazing shots in the cathedral. There's some really good moments of, you know, just us having fun and like soaking blistered feet and things like that. Rivers and bidets and other things that we do, because, you know, that was also because you're walking 20, 30 miles, and, you know, you need to give your feet a break at night. So Compete is a great thing. I gave Eric all of my Compete. I don't know if that helped or not, but you know, James Brittle said use duct tape, so you know, that's another option. But okay, so that's the slideshow. I figured now we could just bring the folks who, if y'all feel comfortable coming up to the stage, or just discussion. Sorry. All right, so I figured, I mean, do y'all just want to introduce yourselves? So everybody knows.
I'm David Olson. I work here at St. John's.
I'm Cheryl McNally. I'm Emily Olson. I'm Emily Smedgy. I'm Janet France. Christy Mortlock.
I'm Forrest Moore, and I'll introduce you
Okay.
to Swiss.
We all had nicknames.
Yeah.
Trail names.
Out of Swiss. And we're joined by three others. Martha Garst also came, Jim Olson, David and Emily's dad, who coordinated a lot of this, and pretty well, basically coordinated all of it. And then Kristen Stone, who was a good friend of mine, was also joined us. And all three expressed deep regret not being able to come here today. So I shared with the group, and one of the things that is brought up in the Jack Hitt book, and then actually another book that I read about the in preparation for this, because we had been trying to do this for like 3 or 4 years. I think we first started talking about it like 2018. And then, you know, numbers kind of dropped, and then of course we had COVID and the pandemic. I mean, Spain shut down pretty much for all of 2020 and most of 2021, and then reopened for us to be able to do this. But one of the things that really drove my thinking about this class, but also just about doing the Camino in general, is why? Why would you do this? In his book, Jack Hitt talks about how there are 3 pilgrimages in Europe. You could actually go to Jerusalem, you can go to Rome from England, and you can do the Camino de Santiago. And you know, Rome makes sense because it's the center of power. That's where St. Peter's is. That's where the Pope is, obviously. Jerusalem, of course, is, you know, a no-brainer. It's a big city. What makes Santiago unique, and why thousands of people have been doing it for thousands of years, and why do you want to do it? And so that was a question that I want to pose to the group. So who wants to go first?
Well, I shouldn't admit this to a Sunday school class, but the reason it was always, during the Camino, was always on my forefront was I love adventure. Chris and I do a lot of adventure travel, and I love to hike. And of course, my most favorite passion is hiking in nature. So this offered all 3 of those. And so that's what initially got me you're green light go, I'm definitely joining this group.
David kept asking. So when I started at St. John's over 4 years ago, you were all in planning stages, and I think David asked originally, and I said, no, I can't. And then he asked again, and I said, no, and then he asked again, and finally I said, when is this opportunity going to come up again? I had better seize the day. It's such a wonderful opportunity. Well, I'm I think there were 2 Presbyterians on this group, and I was lucky enough to be invited by my good friend Boris, and I also love adventure. I wasn't initially signed up to go because it wasn't a good time in my life then. And actually, I thought in 2022, it wasn't the greatest time because I had a lot going on this year, but it actually ended up being a real blessing. And the opportunity to, like John said, you were unplugged, and just the challenge of walking 170 miles piqued my interest. And there were days when I questioned that, but we did it. And I met some incredible people.
When we started talking about this in 2018, that was the year that I turned 60. And I thought, what a great challenge this would be to make myself do something that was completely out of my comfort zone. So finally, this year, when we finally got to do it, I turned 64. And I think if I hadn't done it this year, I probably never would have. And it's really life-changing. So it was a great decision.
I don't remember like the real reason in the beginning. I'm not quite sure the 2018 to 2022 transition when I joined the crew, but I will say my motivation when I decided to go and confirmed everything and we were going was I was in a career shift from one job to another, and so I had like a dedicated month off, which is never happens. And so I think that was just like I was truly able to unplug from like computer, like work, like thinking about everything. So I was able to think about life and purpose and just walking every day. And that's kind of my motivation was to like refocus a bit for this journey.
I heard about this from Emily Snedgy. She talked me into it back toward like 2018. And I became more excited as I went. And I, like Emily, was kind of in a transition phase. I'm kind of in between some things and was trying to decide what next. So that's what the journey was, somewhat of a what next for me the whole time. So anyway, it was remarkable.
So I'm trying to think about, well, I guess I was on this from the start. Barbara Johnson talked me into this. She's not here, I don't think, but Barbara Johnson, Judy Repass came to me years ago and were like, we want to do this, but we want you to lead it. And I was like, no. And they kept asking me, and I said yes, eventually. And it's not that I didn't want to go, I just, the thought of being gone for 2 weeks was hard. Like the trip is unique, and over the years we've struggled to get people to commit because 2 weeks is a lot. There's 2 pieces of this trip. One is a physical piece of walking that far, and the other is if you can walk that far, you have the time to be away from your life for 2 weeks, which is the hard part. And so we struggled to get people. We had people who were signed up, and then something happened, we couldn't go, and then those people dropped out, new people. So we ended up with this group. It was kind of an issue, as the group kind of morphed over time. I mean, I think for me, going, I guess, I guess what I would say about it is that when you do faith and spirituality for a job, it can get away from you sometimes. And so for me, I was kind of looking to reconnect with my faith a bit, my own spiritual life, to feel that deeper a bit, to connect myself to something bigger and outside, because I do this for a living. And it sometimes takes away some of the wonder and awe of what I do. And so for me, I was trying to reconnect to that and find that again a bit and go to a place where lots of people have journeyed the same path. I was so amazed that was the thing about me, like walk by a wall. My dad pointed out every single wall. Every wall. The dude loves walls. It's tight big, it's crazy, but he also has a childlike joy of looking at random things like walls. He's like, look at this wall! This wall was here when Jesus was on the earth, and thousands of people have walked by it. And at first I was like, Dad, if you talk about one more wall, I'm just struggling with it. But I would look at the wall and be like, you know what, how many people walk by this wall? You know, and how many people looking to reconnect with their faith? How many people looking to just do penance? But it's just amazing to think about the steps of the people that have gone before you. And probably for all the years of the people that will come after too. You know, that's what I found deeply moving and amazing. Just that, you know, we're part of something much bigger than ourselves. And it's so easy sometimes to forget about that and get so zeroed in our own lives, our own journey, our own path. But to see all that, you know, and I have not traveled Europe. I'm not a big, huge traveler. So for me to go and I love to be outside, and obviously I think that's why they wanted me to go, because I've done lots of long walks and hikes and runs and stuff. But yeah, it was a unique experience, and it was moving, and I enjoyed it. And these people were nice too.
And I'll just say as to why, I mean, it was a lot about reconnection and you know, that I think everybody in this room can experience, you know, the last couple of years have been hard. And so I was just trying to find a way to reset or kind of refine, if that makes sense. The sort of looking at, is there more to this life than just what I have? And so, you know, taking a trip like this obviously meant a lot, and you know, having, you know, being a dad with, you know, 2 school-age kids, it really didn't make sense for me to do this. And it was like 2 weeks, and it was like I work at Virginia Tech, and there was graduation in the semester, and so it was a mass cluster of things, and I was like, I can't leave. And it was actually Kathleen, my wife, was like, you need to go, you need to do this, you committed to doing this years ago. And do this. And so that was really an opportunity to get away. Even though we were connected with apps and other things, and I could always see what was going on at work. I hardly ever checked email because I was like 6 hours ahead. You know, they're in trouble. Oh well. They'll figure it out, but it was a good team. And so being able to do that, being able, like David said, just to walk places where people have walked for thousands of years. And thinking about the mindset of somebody doing that without a phone and without a place to stay that night, and just kind of putting your trust completely in that I'm going to end up okay. And you know, for us, it was a one-way trip from Astorga to Santiago. The thing that David's dad would always mention is, you know, when pilgrims were doing this back in the, you know, 500 years ago, they'd have to get to Santiago and then they'd have to turn around and walk back. And the scallop shell that they had was proof that they went. Sometimes they were sent there as a way of penance, which I can't believe, walking all that way day in and day out in all kinds of weather. We were blessed with like 2 weeks of remarkable weather. Like it didn't rain at all. We had foggy mornings and everything else, which made things nice, but for the most part, it was bright and sunny and warm and really nice that way. But you know, to have to endure that with, you know, the weight of a sin on your shoulders would be, and I would just be like, heck with this, I'm getting the cat 1 to 10. So yeah, it was just that kind of why of looking to reconnect and looking to find something bigger than myself, and to walk with other people from all over the world. And there was a group of about 80 people that I think as the walk progressed, they just kept growing, and they would stay in the hostels together, and they kind of befriended people. So you had, you know, people from Australia and Brazil and Italy and just all over talking to each other, and they'd be like, oh, we lost so, and we would run into them occasionally, and so you're like, oh yeah, you're friend John, I remember, okay. So you know, it was a really remarkable experience. So, the other thing I wanted to ask the group and to share, if y'all feel comfortable, is just describe kind of a thin place where you may have experienced a kind of close. I mean, this is a pilgrimage, and this was an opportunity to kind of connect, but also just to kind of see God everywhere. And I think I mentioned that at the Sombrero, which was at the top of that mountain, going to that prayer service for me was that thing, because, you know, it was just a quick prayer service, but every language was read, and you're there and you felt like a true community, worldwide community of Christians, because from all over. So they read part of the service in English, they read part of the service in Spanish, and French, and Portuguese, and Italian. I think I heard some of the languages too, but, and then they gave each of us a tiny pebble with the yellow arrow on it. And that was, as, you know, we could keep it, we could take it with us to Santiago, place it somewhere. I still have it in my gym bag, which was my backpack. And every day when I'm going to the gym or, you know, taking it out, I see that in there. And that's just a reminder for me of what the trip was. So that was kind of like that place. Who would like to go?
Well, what immediately came to mind was actually an experience. And first of all, I have to tell you, you're probably doing the math in your head. So John said that it was 167 point something miles. Janet said it was 170 miles. And that's because we added 2 miles to our trek on the longest day. So, but the additional 2 miles actually was my thin pet place. So we were busy talking, no surprise, and it was impossible to miss the arrows. I mean, they were right in your face, but somehow we did. And we went down into this beautiful, I mean, we were gonna walk to Belgium. We went down into this beautiful valley and didn't see a soul. We were like, oh my gosh, where is everybody? And long story short, this typical Spanish farmer appears. He's a shepherd, and he's got his little cap on, his little vest on, he's wearing his wellies and his sheepdog. And he turns to us and goes, Peregrino, no. And we were like, what? He points way up to the top of this ridge. And there we can see little bodies walking by, and Janet and I just went, oh my goodness. Thank goodness he stopped us. And so he's, you know, he ushers us back up and out, and so we finally make it back up, and we meet up with some of our friends. And the thin place was, while we were going up, it was like these extra 2 miles, we've got the strength for it, we've got the health for it. And God sent us that shepherd and that little sheepdog, and turned us around, which was, I really felt that. But while we were going up the extra hill, we were praying really hard that a car would come along and take us. We hadn't seen the car the whole time. So lo and behold, we hear a car coming up, and we went, oh my gosh, our prayers answered, our prayers answered. And we're like, sticking our thumb out, and up drives the smallest Fiat you've ever seen, with 2 people and a dog in it, and there's no room for, you know, like a hat. And they couldn't have been any kinder. We were trying to explain that we need to get on the hood of their car so they could take us out. No. So then the rest of the time we said, well, that was God's joke too, because we have the help, and we are strong enough to climb this hill.
Like John, I also really enjoyed O Sombrero and the service there. And I think the passage, I can't remember exactly the passage we read, but it was about God is love, love one another. And it was so universal, that idea of loving one another in all these different languages. And that's what, and I think the Rock said something like, love is, I think she said when she handed it out, love is the way. So that was a nice reminder, but I didn't really have an exact thin place, but I did have some realizations as I was walking. There's a lot of time with people talking, but a lot of time on your own thinking. And I listened to a lot of Agatha Christie books too. I got to spend a lot of great time with Emily and Kristen too, who were kind of the rear guard. The three amigos, yeah. But I realized that sometimes I focus so much on the destination and lose sight of all that God is bringing into my life every day and every moment, because my eyes are so focused on the goal or destination, on Santiago and Compostela. And like, just this moment here with you all, it is a God moment. I forget that so easily in my distraction to get to the next thing. And so I realized my life could pass me by with just forgetting all these moments, these loving moments that are happening with you all. And that it's part of my discipleship to embrace the present moment of it, because I forget that sometimes. And so that was a nice realization for me.
There were so many God moments in this trip that it's too many to mention, but I think just the fact of slowing down and being present, because you had to be present, there was nowhere else to be on those long, the afternoons got really, really long for me. So about day 7, got some blisters, and I would say, Florence, we just have to stop, or, I just have to sit down for a minute. And so you had to stop in the afternoon for me. And that was really, we get so caught up and busy in our day-to-day lives, and we all have these lists and, what's next. And those days, those afternoons, really forced me to have a moment to stop and think and look around. And the miles, I call them Camino miles, they're longer, or kilometers, they're really longer than the miles in America.
There were many special moments along the way, but the very last night that most of us were there, Friday night, we went to mass in the cathedral in Santiago. And if you've seen the movie The Way, at the end in the cathedral, they light the Botafumeiro, which John had a picture of in a slide of in the show. And they did that at the end. They don't always do it every mass, but they did it that night. And we were there on the front row, and it was just amazing. I get chills thinking about it still. And I'm just so thankful we got to experience that.
The church service was amazing. That was just the community of everyone from all over the world being in the same room. It's just a beautiful, focused moment. Personally, I had this, my feet hurt a lot towards the end. So I definitely had to slow down, and that was good. I would hike in 5-mile increments. So I'd get up, hike 5, take off my shoes, elevate my feet, have the shoes. That's kind of how I did it towards the end. And there was also in the afternoons, it just got really hot. And every single step you're taking, just you can feel your heels hitting the ground is what it feels like over and over and over again. It's just agony. So I would just start be in between the groups, and I would always start with people, and then toward the end, I entered this state where people just kind of left me alone. They're Emily's finishing her hike, she's fine, just you just let her be. And oddly enough, that was the best time for me, because there's something about I don't know, being in pain and hiking and just pushing through, really pushing you to a different state of being. And kind of looking back now, it's easy to say I really enjoyed that time. In the moment, it wasn't great, but I had the freedom also too to kind of just go through all the emotions throughout a day. Usually we're just so busy, sometimes we don't process our emotions. We're this. And so on these trips a day, you have so many emotions. You have joy with being surrounded by people that you're getting to know, beauty and nature and excitement, and then actual physical pain, uncomfortableness, tiredness. You just went through all of it. So it was just a beautiful moment there. I think that was my connection to God, was feeling everything. And now I have a new metric too. So now whenever I'm do I want something? Would I walk the Camino for this? It's my new, I don't know. I must not really want it. That's not the direction it's going in. But if I could rewalk the Camino and go after this desire, and I really, really want this in my life. So that's my new metric now.
I didn't have just one moment like many of you all. I had a lot of, and it was the nature that
it was so incredibly beautiful, and we were there and at the right time in the spring where everything was blooming and the light was just phenomenal. I just, these rays of light from heaven would just, they were like heaven sent. They would come down and filter through the trees. I don't know if you saw that one picture that John had with the eucalyptus forest that was so, but it was on everything. It was, that it would come through the trees, and it was just, you knew you were loved, that God was just surrounding you all the time. And the other thing that was so impressive to me was how everyone was there to support everybody else. And there were, I would have never made, I know everybody says that the shells and arrows were everywhere and you can't get lost. I could get lost no matter what. If I didn't have everybody there to like say, go this way, no, not that way. I mean, it was, so it was easy for me to get lost. If I hadn't had the others around me, I would have never made it to the end. So I'm just thankful for everybody's support along the way, and it was amazing.
Real quick, I guess the two places that I just remember, and there were lots of them, were one John mentioned, the one in the nighttime where I got to see the stars. I woke up, I didn't sleep that well. Sleep with my dad snoring, my roommate's snoring wasn't super helpful with that. But I saw through the window, I saw the stars, and I was like, I'm gonna go outside. I just felt a little cooped up. Yeah, I think that's where, John, you know, Swiss do everything. I read, Swiss, where am I?
Swiss.
Tell me where I am right now. And just went outside, and you know, it's always, if you've been to other parts of the world, you know, we lived in Australia for a while, and we look at the stars, but the stars are different in different places in the world. Which is what's so neat about looking at the stars other places. And that's how it was there. The Milky Way and the stars were, I was looking at them from a different location, so it changed. It was no light pollution, and it really felt thin. Like I felt like I was closer to heaven in some ways. And just, you know, for me, the natural connection was always a big part of it as well. And then at the very end, at Finisterre, which the Romans call the end of the world, which you see why it's considered the end of the world. We were sitting on this rock, we climbed around to Emily, my dad and I, and we were just looking out at the ocean, and it just looked like the end of the world. But it was just neat to think about again, the people that had been there and kind of the finish of the journey and stuff like that. So I found that moment. It was a beautiful day as well. I think for me personally, the trip, you know, it wasn't as much of a physical challenge for me as it was a mental challenge. You know, as far as slowing down and like not feeling like I had to hurry or be places or go faster or run or like be on the next thing. So living in the moment was challenging for me. And I knew it would be going in. I was like, man, I'm gonna go out of my mind. I never want to spend that much time in my own head, you know, because I'm an overthinker. So I just knew yours would be constantly like this. And I was like, am I gonna be able to slow my brain down enough to enjoy this? And I was able to. It took me days to kind of, you know, slow down, but the mental challenge, you know, I was able to finally relax and kind of live into the moments of the day-to-day lives. But it's hard when you think to do that. Because I think we just drive ourselves to distraction as a way to almost cope with the craziness of life sometimes. So when you have to be forced to slow down, you're like, wow, now I have to actually think about things and process them and work through them. But it's a worthy thing to do. I found that moment, so for sure. Any questions that anybody has about the trip before we finish up? I mean, any questions for anybody up here about like something that you thought about or wondered about? Jane Garrett.
Are you gonna do it again?
I don't know. Someone sent in our little group thing. Somebody sent what was it? Another pilgrimage.
Ireland.
It was in Ireland.
Adrian's Wall.
Adrian's Wall was one. Yeah. And then another round. So we tossed down the idea. I don't know if Henry's going to give me permission to disappear that long again. And I got a little extended stay, which is a little bit extra part of the story. But I don't know. Yeah, we think we're going to try another one, and we'll be open to everybody. Obviously, if anybody's interested. It was a good experience. You know, I think. You know, I don't know. You guys are going to do it again? Any other questions about the trip itself? John? Oh, yeah.
Did you do any physical training before going on it, or were you all already fit?
They met for walks.
Yeah.
I did a lot of walking,
We
I
did.
walk every day.
Yeah.
And honestly, that was kind of the two biggest disappointments were leaving three of us behind. I mean, that was like ripping off our arms. But coming back after having that goal of walking the Camino and getting together and doing the training walks, that really was the added benefit. And we knew we didn't want to fail. So we walked Mill Mountain a lot, and I'm glad we did.
Just lots of walking. I will say though, I live in DC and I walk everywhere now. And I don't know if that's like the Camino part of like still in me because I live like 2.5 miles from my work and I'm like, I'll just walk to work. Or like you're walking to work, that's like 2.5 miles. Trust me. It's nothing.
Any other? Thanks, everybody. Thank you.